Theater. So we arrived in Washington, D.C. Wednesday afternoon. We got to have a really cool discussion that was kind of New Moran-esque about the potential of this performance space down in the subway. Not a lot to say about that right now, but it reminds me of this kind of New Moran thing that we're trying to push through, adaptive reuse in a really exciting way. But then we went right from that to the Cinderella dress rehearsal at the Kennedy Center, which is a very cool space, very, very modern, but in a kind of slightly more welcoming way. Feels very Washington, D.C., very tall spaces with lots of flags and cute little pillow tees and that kind of thing. Corbusier would have approved. But the dress rehearsal was really cool. And as I said last week when Liz and I saw The Rake's Progress, there's a real palpable energy when performers are getting to be in front of an audience in those early stages when they're still trying to work out how they want the show to go. And these actors were great. The singers, performers, whatever you want to call them, were really fun. This older interpretation of Cinderella, which I think definitely predates Disney, probably predates the Grimm's fairy tale version, goes back to a version that doesn't involve any glass slipper or anything like that. The basic plot is Cinderella has an evil stepfather, I think, not stepmother, and he's using her inheritance because I guess she comes from money or something, and has his daughters that he's making very happy and lavish, and then Cinderella has to do all the cleaning with the rats. That's all kind of familiar. The interesting twist that I don't think is in the movie or any other version I've seen is that she gets to go to a ball because this very Merlin-looking wizard, not a fairy godmother, helps to get her there. And then the prince, or at the ball, is kind of like, well, geez, I don't want women interested in me just because I'm a wealthy prince. So he trades places with his valet, and his valet pretends to be the prince and he pretends to be the valet. And so when they talk to the evil stepsisters, they're kind of like, oh, you're amazing. And they're talking, of course, to the valet who's posing as the prince. And the valet, as the prince, is like, oh, I love you both, but I'm going to pick one of you, and then my valet will marry the other one. And they're both like, no, that sounds terrible, which is interesting because, of course, if they'd agreed to that, whoever married the valet would be the one actually marrying the prince. Anyway, Cinderella's at the ball, and she ends up falling in love with the valet as a person, very sweet, nothing to do with stations, and they're talking to each other and relating, it's very sweet. And then the prince, though, the valet posing as the prince, kind of proposes to Cinderella and is like, you're so beautiful, I'm in love with you. And Cinderella actually says to who she thinks is the prince, I'm sorry, I'm in love with someone else. And of course, the idea of romantic love pretty much any time before the 1900s was a very strange thing. Like, if you were getting married, it was for the practicality of it, the property exchange, the wealth, all that kind of thing. So Cinderella says no to the prince. She wants to marry the valet, and the valet is like, oh, guess what? I'm actually the prince. So that was kind of fun. A couple notes about the show. Really loved the set design, lighting, costumes, all that stuff was great. The problem with the show, and this, I guess, goes right to the libretto, is that it's very, very long. The whole show is about 3 hours, and it just drags. Because there are moments that are incredibly high energy, incredibly fun, incredibly comedic, but then, this was in Italian, and you're seeing the super titles, and there will be one line, and then that one line will stay up there for 3 minutes. And I kind of sat there being like, oh, is it not changing because that's the only important thing we need to know? No, someone told me it's staying up there because the characters are just repeating the same line. And so it's weird to have that juxtaposition of really strong comedic beats, comic timing. Again, the actors were great. A lot of great physical humor. And then, something just kind of gets hammered at you over and over and over. So again, it was 3 hours. It probably could have been an hour and a half. And I don't think there's anything wrong with an opera that's an hour and a half. Tell a good story, have good performances, have good music. That's all I have to say about the preview dress rehearsal of Cinderella. It was a lot of fun. If you happen to be in DC, go check it out at the Kennedy Performing Arts Center. I give it, despite the length, 4 stars with a confidence of 3.